Hello and welcome. Today's project is all about pornography recovery. As you may or may not know, I am 4 years clean of pornography. This was one of, if not the biggest mountain I've climbed in regards to addiction. Well, the biggest in regards to addiction, easily, in my life. I was addicted to pornography for a decade. And the first question, when is it an addiction? For me, I noticed that when I tried to stop doing it, I couldn't stop doing it. That's when I knew. You know, when I first stumbled upon nofap on YouTube, it was interesting. I actually laughed at these people who were on it. It was funny, but it was far left from what I was accustomed to, right? Like their beliefs about pornography and how harmful it is and that they decided to quit was so unlike my identity. They challenged my identity, and because it was so far left, it just stuck with me. It's like, even though I was very reluctant to pursue that path, their voice stuck around. It was like this seed that was planted, and as I was going through my anxiety recovery, I then realized that pornography for me was this thing that was part of my identity that I wanted to move away from, this anxious identity, right? And so let's talk about dopamine, because dopamine is huge when it comes to pornography. I mean, pornography is one of the biggest super stimuli we have today in our current culture. Now, dopamine is the craving, anticipation neurochemical. That's when we know the reward is just down the road. That if we pursue this path, we're going to get that blast of dopamine. And dopamine secretes early on when we know, right? It's the anticipation that we're going to get this massive reward at the end of the tunnel, right? So, and the higher the blast of dopamine at the end, the reward, the higher the reward, the more we put value on that action that gave us this reward. Now, in Atomic Habits by James Clear, he lays out the fundamentals of a habit, which is the cue, the craving, the response, and then the reward. So let's dive into the cue. For me, the cue was everywhere. It was the beautiful woman walking down the street. It was on Instagram. The cue was on TikTok. Well, not at the time, but now it certainly is. And the cue is anywhere. When you're watching a movie, a thought, the images that pop in your head, they can trigger the craving that follows. And you have to separate yourself from the cue. Now, how the heck do you do that when it's everywhere? I mean, that's the problem with pornography addiction. You know, for me, it was everywhere I went, the cue was there. And so, well, you have to first observe when you experience the craving. Right? Notice when it comes up. Are you on the subway? Did you notice a beautiful woman and then you're starting to crave pornography? Or was it when you're watching an erotic scene in Game of Thrones? Or is it when you are, it could be in your bedroom because your laptop is there, time of day, situation, maybe everyone leaves the house and that's the cue for you to go and watch pornography. So notice that, observe that. And then we have the craving, right? We all know what that is. It's when we're like, we start to yearn for it, we start to imagine, we start to anticipate, right? And that's the secretion of the dopamine. The dopamine starts to come in, we start to imagine ourselves going and watching pornography, and then, you know, the mind plays out that action, and then it knows what's to come. No pun intended. Then we have the response, right? That's our action. This is the moment when we determine whether we act on this anticipation, this craving, the desire comes knocking at your door and you invited it in, right? We have this opportunity now to say, okay, well, what is the identity I want to inhabit? Am I going to let these circuits win, or am I going to rise above this desire, this craving? Now, we have to make the response more difficult to engage in order to rise above pornography. Now, for me, like looking back on my recovery, I noticed that I started to change my environment. This was massive for me. A lot of the response to the craving would come when people would leave the house, when I would be left alone or in my bedroom or being bored in the basement. So I noticed that if I were to go out to the coffee shop with my favorite book, or to listen to my favorite podcast, or to drive the car around the neighborhood and grab a coffee or tea or something, or go to the gym, or to go to the library, I noticed that when I was going out of the house, a lot of the cues were in the house and away from being private. I noticed that my response to pornography was becoming less and less. Becoming less and less. And so I would even say call up somebody. If you have someone close to you that you trust, that you've talked to about this pornography situation that you are currently contending with, then call them and say, I'm craving this right now. And hopefully they will give you some words of wisdom. I've had clients call me who are battling pornography and say, hey Brad, I'm having these crazy urges right now. And then I would talk to them and they were like, oh my God, I'm so glad I called you, because now I've separated myself from this desire that I would have fell into. Because you have to remember, this circuit is so massive. It's well practiced. I've practiced that circuit for a decade. So no wonder it was so difficult for me to overcome that circuit. So calling somebody, talking to them, really helpful. Also, at this moment, when you're craving this, I would say pull up that YouTube video of that person who battled pornography and overcame that problem that you're currently contending with, and watch it, learn from them, be inspired by their story so that you're less likely to fall into that temptation. And then I already said the gym, really helpful, because the gym is going to provide you with a reward. You're going to get all that tension out and you're going to feel pretty good about afterwards, after you've you released natural dopamine while at the gym as well. So working vigorously on yourself. Also, removing stuff from your environment, because you're less likely to act on the desire when the action is much more difficult to engage in. If the laptop isn't there, for example, or if the phone has a restrictive block on certain websites, or your laptop has restrictions on certain websites, make it more difficult for you to get to the place that is going to make you relapse, right? Or get you into that habit that you don't want to engage in. And then we have the reward. Now, what is the outcome? Are you de-stressed? Did you satisfy your cravings for sexual intimacy or intimacy in general with a woman through fantasy that is on the computer with not real women? It was just a projection, like Tinkerbell. It's the projection of the of the fantasies that we all have, and it's easy to satisfy sexual cues, sexual urges through the computer, but it's way more difficult to go on a date, to woo a woman, or to pursue that path, to work up the courage to have a meaningful conversation with them, right? And that's way more difficult than taking the easy route and just going online, going on your phone and satisfying yourself that way, which I've done because I was always very shy talking to girls in high school and college. So I always took the easy way out, and look where it got me. A lot of his social anxiety, underdeveloped social skills later in my life that I had to really work on later in my 20s, because I could have worked on that earlier in my 20s, but right, I just took the easy way out for such a long time. But anyways, are you distracting yourself with pornography from any responsibilities? Are you distracting yourself from responsibilities with pornography? That's the better way to put it. Are you embodying the identity you want to become when you are watching pornography? Because our identity is made up of our beliefs and our values. And if we're watching pornography, we're clearly putting pornography up on the values hierarchy of what we value, right? What you act out continuously determines what you value. So pornography for me was something of high value. And so that made up my identity. But is this the identity I want to embody? Who is that identity? Well, the people I started to bring into my life who were role models did not watch pornography. And so I started to surround myself with those people. And when I would have that craving and that urge to watch, I would pull up their videos and their content and be inspired by them, and that would motivate me to steer a different direction into the identity I want to embody. Pornography for me was a big part in my life because I had many internal disruptions. When I say that, I'm talking about boredom. There was no meaning in my life at the time when I was watching pornography. I always felt uncomfortable with myself, and I felt like, well, to be that confident person, it's going to be so difficult, or to have success, that's a lot of work. I'm going to stay in what's comfortable to me, and pornography, that was comfort. And then I noticed that when I would finish watching pornography, I would have this strong disappointment, because it was fun knowing that I was going to watch it, but afterwards I noticed that, wow, it's over. This sucks. I'm back in reality. I'm back here, and I'm like, well, where's the next escape? And so, when I would get my energy back, then I would watch pornography again, sometimes twice in one day. Right? It was knowing that it was around the corner that made me feel like, hey man, this is great, there's something to do today. And so I needed to add more value into my life. And you have to also understand that when you get rid of pornography from your day, there's going to be an open space. And so what are you going to replace in that open space? Right? Are you going to go to the gym, like I said before, library, or are you going to look for a new job, or like something else that is rewarding but isn't the habit that you're trying to get away from? And lastly, to conclude this video, when I changed my response to the craving, I was building a real change in my identity. When I changed that response, just because I am yearning to watch pornography doesn't mean I need it. When I started to separate myself from the action, setting small enough goals. I want to go 1 day without watching it and then completing that goal. I want to go 2 days, thinking of it as a 1 day at a time venture, not thinking, oh, I want to get to 4 years like Brad. It's like, no, if it's your battle, think of it as, okay, today I'm not going to watch it. What do I need to do today? Today is an opportunity to prove my old self wrong. And that's where I'm going to leave you today. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Let me know if you're currently on this nofap journey. What are the challenges you're currently contending with? And rise above anxiety, rise above pornography. I will see you next time. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and that bell so that whenever a new video of mine appears, you will be one of the first to know. Namaste.